You've got some cash. Should you pay down your debt or invest? Ted's here to discuss it. Let's begin.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Ted, welcome back. Today's topic seems like a really easy question to answer. This is probably going to be a 30-second podcast.
Excellent.
So let me give you the scenario, and you tell me what you think. So let's say I've got $1,000.
Okay, you have $1,000.
I have $1,000. Maybe it's from my tax refund, a birthday gift from my
there's
mother.
An old Steve Martin routine.
Is
anyway,
there?
we'll talk about it later.
We'll have to do that on our next broadcast. Maybe it's a bonus from work. Doesn't matter. So I owe $1,000 on my credit card, and the interest rate is, let's say, 20%.
Okay.
So would you agree that the obvious strategy is to take the $1,000 and pay down my credit card?
Makes sense to me.
Thanks for coming out there.
Save yourself $200 worth of interest.
Please like and subscribe. And next week we'll be back. Actually, next week it'll be a pre-recorded show. So yes, this is obvious. $1,000, 20% over the course of a year, you save $200.
At some point, it's going to be less obvious, right? You're going to change the facts on me?
Yes, we're going to change the facts, make it a little less obvious.
Okay.
So now if I have a low interest credit card, let's say it's 10% interest.
Okay.
And I can assume 10% on my investments because I'm really good at that investing thing. So then is it a coin flip or is there anything else I got to consider?
Well, okay. It's 10% on your investment. Is that before or after taxes?
Ooh.
And at your tax rate, that could be a big number.
That's huge numbers, huge numbers. So I guess if I'm investing inside my TFSA and I'm not paying taxes until maybe it becomes closer to a coin flip.
And still, I don't think that it does because by paying off the debt, you're reducing the outgoing cash flow you're going to have for the months ahead if you don't pay off the debt.
That's a good point. So, okay, so even if I'm in the 50% tax bracket, then I earn $1 in interest. I only get to keep half of it, so I need to earn twice as much to break even. So, so let's do some math here. I did some show prep here.
Okay.
Show prep.
I got cards for a change.
You got cards today. You only just saw them 45 seconds ago, but that's the way we like it. The loan interest rate is 10%, monthly compounding. My marginal tax rate is 35%. My loan interest is tax deductible. Okay, so let's say I'm putting this into some kind of investment or something.
Sure.
The marginal tax rate on my investment income, let's say it's also 35%. That would kind of make sense. So the break-even rate is 10.47%. So the break-even rate, of course, is what your investment must earn before tax if to match the return on using your money to reduce debt. Now, if the loan interest is not tax deductible, then the break-even rate is 16%.
That's going to be clear as mud for all of our regular listeners. Right.
So again, this is kind of a no-brainer here, right? Yep. Pay off the debt.
Right.
Okay, now we're going to make it even more complicated.
Okay.
I got $1,000. I can either pay off debt or put the money in my RRSP.
Okay.
Or your favorite, the tax-free first-time home savings account, which we've done a show on. Right. And I can get a tax refund. Mm-hmm. So now, isn't this decision a little more nuanced? Should I take the money and put it into that investment and get a tax refund?
Well, and so how big is your tax refund going to be?
Well, I guess it depends on my marginal tax rate.
Right.
So
you create an example.
30% is my tax rate.
So your refund is going to be $300 on the $1,000. All right.
Right.
And if you don't pay off the credit card, are we still at the 20% interest?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to pay $200 worth of interest, I guess, for $100 a head.
So
if we put it in the RSP.
Right. And so in the first year, I'm ahead, but of course I still owe interest going forward. That's the problem.
Well, but that's right. The second year, there is no tax deduction because there's no new $1,000. So now the $100 you were up from year one, you're down $200 in year two. So the net effect is that after 2 years, you're out $100.
Yeah, and that's the problem with not paying down debt. So I could take the $300, pay down my credit card with it. So I take the refund. Yep. So I got $1,000 in my RSP. I take the $300, and this is what a lot of the financial gurus recommend. You see,
that's because they get fees for having a larger book of investment.
They're selling stuff, so they say why not do both? Yes. Put the $1,000 in your RSP, take the $300 refund, pay down your credit card with it.
Okay, so now I've got a $700 debt that's being charged 20% interest with $140 this year. And where's that $140 coming from?
Yeah, and is your RSP going to earn $140 on that $1,000 you put in it? Are you earning 14% in your RSP?
Well, if I've been buying U.S. tech stocks that have been going crazy for the last 6 months, but we know what that's going to happen.
Yeah, and you put all your money in Bitcoin, so obviously it's a little more volatile. So yeah, again, the math is not. It still kind of ends up being obvious when you look at it. Okay, let's take the example then. I have a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so same question. Should I use the money to pay down my mortgage, or should I invest that in an RSP?
All right. Well, so what's the interest rate on your mortgage?
And this is where it gets complicated.
Right.
Because the only way you could really answer that question is to do a whole bunch of math.
Well, but there's no way that the mortgage is going to be at an interest rate equal to the credit card.
I would
credit
hope
card's
not.
going to be double, triple, 5 times the interest rate. I still don't think this is very complicated.
Yeah, and I think you're right as well. Now, to prove it, what you do is you go onto the interwebs and you go to a calculator. Right. And I'll put links in the show notes to various calculators. You say, okay, if I put this, then they got calculators, pay off mortgage or credit card. And you do the math, and it's like, okay, yeah, my mortgage interest rate is, 5%, 6%, 10%. There's no way it can possibly be 20%. So it seems like an obvious one. You're better to pay off your mortgage if your mortgage interest rate is equal to or higher than the rate of return on your RSP, which it probably is as well, depending on how great an investor you are, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think there are two. So again, the whole show now, we've been going for 6 minutes and everything we've said is obvious. Like, why are we wasting everyone's time? Okay. I've got two scenarios where investing may be better than paying off debt. Okay. So you tell me what you think. Scenario number one, I want to buy a house in 2 years. I'm a first-time home buyer. So I put the money in my tax-free first-time home savings account instead of paying down a credit card. Would that possibly make sense?
Maybe.
Because I'm getting a big refund.
Right. You're getting this incentive to be a first-time home buyer, so there's going to be an extra kick from it.
So maybe that makes sense. Because if I'm in the 50% tax bracket, even the 30 or 40%, I'm getting 30 or 40% that I can now use to pay towards my home. Okay, here's the second scenario where it may make sense.
Okay.
I've got $20,000 in credit card debt, but I just inherited $40,000.
Congratulations. I'm sorry for your loss.
Yes, I don't know who. And I've got a lot of unused contribution room in either my RSP or my TFF THSA, and my marginal tax rate's 50%. So would it make sense to invest the $40,000 and then use the $20,000 tax refund to pay off my credit card?
Probably.
That's kind of a no-brainer then, because I get the best of both worlds in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to try to anticipate, are you going to end up putting the debt right back on the credit cards, look at some other things, but for this one, we'll say yes, it's equal.
So, okay, so you're kind of skirting around what the real issue is here.
Right. Cash is king.
Cash is the real issue. From a yes, if you pay down the debt, then you don't have the debt.
Right.
Like nothing can go wrong then. You can't have people suing you for the debt because it's paid off.
Right. Well, if you lose your job or things get tight for some reason or an unexpected expense comes up, you don't have to worry about the debt.
So what you're really talking about here is risk.
Right.
That's what this is really all about.
And that's what interest is, right? Is you're paying somebody for the privilege of using their money, and the amount you pay them is the amount of risk they're assuming and letting you have it.
So there's risk on two sides. There's the risk that I lose my job and can't service my debt, so it would have been better to pay it off. But there's also risk on the investment side.
Right.
Because I'm assuming if I invest instead of paying off my debt, I'm going to do really well on my investment.
Well, I mean, you are gambling, right? That's another word for risk that people might find more comfortable. If you want to get a high rate of return, you got to have a high rate of risk in that investment, right? You can't just buy a Canada savings bond, which is going to pay you what, 1.5% right now?
I don't think they exist anymore. I think
they're gone?
They eliminated them 15 years ago. This is why we don't give investment advice on the show, people. We are recording this in the summer of 2024.
Right.
And as we record this, the stock market is still doing pretty good.
And it's still setting records, but it's only setting records because of half a dozen stocks,
well,
right?
Yes, those 6 guys are carrying the whole thing.
Yep.
If you put your money in a GIC, you're getting okay interest compared to where it was a couple of years ago.
I suppose.
Not compared to where it was 20 or 30 years ago.
Yep.
And as for inflation, well, we'll talk about that again. Everyone knows my thoughts on that. I believe we're going to a 0% inflation rate. And
right.
Clearly, I've been wrong on
And
that.
I don't.
You do not agree, and you're probably going to end up being right on that one.
Right.
So because the stock market has done well over the last 10 or 15 years, other than that period in 2020 where it had a little bit of a bump, does that mean the stock market's going to go up forever for the rest of your life?
Well, that's certainly what the investment gurus will tell you, right? If they want you to put your money in their stock. But the truth is, there's no way of knowing.
And nothing goes up in a straight line forever. I mean, you remember 1929 because you were just a young lad back then.
Mm-hmm.
We had the big crash, and the market did not get back to that same point until 1954.
Yeah.
So 29, 39, 49. That's like 25 years it took to get back. This is the problem with assuming that you're going to have, big time income on your investments and it'll go all the way. So can you really earn whatever you think you're going to earn? Maybe
Odds
not.
are against you.
Now, the other issue I have with all this, so you decide, okay, I'm going to put it in the RSP as an investment. I'm going to get the tax refund.
Right.
What do you do with the tax refund? Are you going to
re-roll it into the next year's RRSP contribution?
Or I'm going to take a vacation.
Right.
How disciplined are you to spend that tax refund? That's the other question I think you got to ask yourself. Okay, so we are both on the side of if you've got some extra money, pay off debt.
Right.
We
are risk averse. Because we're accountants and we're old white guys.
Exactly. Well, we're definitely old, that's for sure. What's the average age in the room? What's the total age in the room right now? Well over 120.
Mm-hmm.
So if I pay off the debt, nothing can go wrong with that debt.
Correct.
Like that's the whole.
The debt is gone.
That's the whole point.
You no longer have access to the cash, but if something does go wrong, I suppose you could recreate the debt.
Yeah. Well, if
you have access to it.
If you still have your line of credit, okay, if I can draw on it. So let's say, go back to the scenario then. You have just got $1,000 or $10,000, whatever the number is.
Yep.
And so you agree with what we've been saying. Yes, I will pay off my debt with it.
Right.
How do you go about doing that then? Is there I got 3 or 4 different debts. I got credit cards, payday loans, whatever. What's your philosophy on that?
So the financial advice that makes the most sense is to pay off the most expensive debt first, the highest interest rate, because that'll get you the most bang for the buck. There are folks out there that'll tell you to pay off the smallest debt first because it's easiest and you get the satisfaction of doing it. I think if you need to take that approach, you probably have to have a conversation with somebody else about your financial planning. The goal here is to get yourself out of debt, to get the most bang for that $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is, then put it where it can do the most good.
Yeah, I'm with you because, again, we're accountants.
Right.
I want to save the most amount of money. So if I have a debt that has a 20% interest rate and another one with a 10% interest rate, I'm whacking away the 20% one first.
Right.
I'm making my minimum payments on everyone. I don't want to
get into trouble,
penalties or anything, but I'm whacking away at the biggest one first. However, I can understand the alternate viewpoint. If you have, a cell phone debt for $50, $100, okay, I can understand. Okay, I'm just going to clear that one up, even though the interest rate perhaps isn't horrible, because it's one less thing I have to worry about.
Right.
I'm eliminating the mental gymnastics and all that, but then it's done. Okay, but what if you're a car guy, as we all know?
Right.
I have a car loan.
Mm-hmm.
The interest rate is reasonable.
Yeah.
But is there ever an advantage to repaying a secured debt as opposed to an unsecured debt?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you are still paying interest on that loan, so you're saving money by paying it off more quickly. And what are you going to be doing with this car in the future? Like if you think you're going to want to sell it privately, it's better to clear the debt first. It'll make it a lot less complicated. If you think you want to trade it in, it's still, there's some advantages to paying down the debt first so that there's no negative equity going into the next car.
Now, you mentioned the word risk before.
Yep. Actually, you said risk. I said gamble.
That's right. And I was going to say speculate.
There you go. That's a good word.
Investy. So I want to keep my risk level low. So if I pay off my car loan and then I lose my job, I don't have to worry about somebody repossessing my car because I own it outright.
Right.
Would that be a reason to consider paying off a secured debt before an unsecured debt?
Possibly. The issue is still going to be the same, though. If you lose your job and you've paid off the car loan and you still have all this higher interest unsecured debt, you're going to have an issue to deal with. So it's probably going to make more sense to pay off the high interest debt first.
But in this scenario where I've lost my job and I can't pay my credit card, what are they going to do?
Well, That's true.
You're going to sue me. You can't garnish my wages because I don't have any.
Yep.
I start a new job. You don't know where I'm working. And again, I'm not suggesting this is the way you should go about living your life here. But if my car is paid off, nobody can repossess it.
As long as it's under the exemption value, nobody could get a court order.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
It gets a little complicated.
If it's a $20,000 car, I live in Ontario, someone gets a judgment against me, then I
you take a swing at your car, but that's not likely to happen.
It's not likely to happen. Okay, so you are still in the camp that save the interest, people.
Right.
Like it's really as simple as that.
Yep.
And so your answer doesn't change then with respect to paying off a mortgage because, again, if I have a paid off house, nobody can repossess my house under normal circumstances.
Right.
But you'd still be prioritizing the interest.
Because the mortgage, even at today's rates, is going to be what, 5%? And the credit card is going to be 19, 20, 21, 29.
Yeah. So it does become a no-brainer then. Okay, so back to the philosophy here then. So you agree that I've got a lump sum of money. Yep. I've got 4 or 5 different debts. Maybe if I've got 1 or 2 really small ones, okay, chip away, get them out of there. That way yep. I'm not trying to manage 5 different payments every week when my paycheck comes in. But then you agree, you make your minimum payments on everything and anything extra gets thrown at the highest dollar one.
Yep.
Okay. So it is fairly simple from that point of view. Okay. So final question then. I can't pay off all my debts.
Right.
Like this.
So you inherited $10,000, but you owe 20. So we're flipping your scenario backwards.
There you go. So
right?
what is your advice in that scenario?
Well, so the practical thing to do is, can you file a consumer proposal? That's a legal procedure whereby you offer to repay a portion of what you owe. And 50 cents on the dollar would be a good deal for these people.
So in a typical consumer proposal, and our typical client would have about $50,000 worth of unsecured debts. Credit cards, bank loans, payday loans, income taxes, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so the amount you have to pay in a consumer proposal is how much? How do you come up with a number?
There are 2 calculations we do. The first is, what would your creditors receive if you filed bankruptcy? That doesn't mean that you're going to file bankruptcy, but we have to do that calculation so you've got something for the creditor to say, hey, wait a minute, we're only getting this. The other number is, most of the banks have told us they want 30 cents on the dollar, and that's just a number. It's a policy that they've made.
So if I go bankrupt, how much are they going to get then?
Well, so in the scenario we've got, you just inherited $10,000, you got $20,000 worth of debt. If you file bankruptcy, that $10,000 is going to be seized. So they're going to get it.
And if I go bankrupt and don't have $10,000,
then it all depends on what your income is, what's your current situation, how many people are living in the household, how much money's coming in, what other expenses along the lines of medical or that sort of thing, support payments.
So we do the calculation and say, okay, based on your income, and the government has a grid. It's called surplus income. I think people are vaguely familiar with how that works. So if you're a single guy, you're allowed to make roughly $2,600 a month.
That's right.
You make $3,600 a month. You're $1,000 over the limit. You got to pay half of that, $500 a month.
And you pay that for 21 months, unless you've been bankrupt before, but we're not going to talk about that.
So under that scenario, I'm going to pay $10,500 in my bankruptcy.
Right.
So if I do a consumer proposal, it has to be more than that number.
Correct.
So if I've got $50,000 worth of debt, I've got a $10,000 lump sum I just received, and I'd have to pay $10,500 in a bankruptcy.
So probably you're going to have to offer to pay $20,500 in the proposal. They've got to get at least what the bankruptcy is worth, or there's no reason for them to accept it.
And that's the key. If I owe you $100 and I've got $1,000 in my pocket, are you going to accept $50? You're going to say, no, give me all the money.
Right.
So it has to be a bit more. So in that scenario, what advice would you be giving? Would you be saying, okay, we're going to have to do a proposal where, let's say you have to pay $24,000.
Sure.
Which would be $400 a month for 5 years.
Correct.
But I've got $10,000 cash in the bank.
Yep.
Would you be offering a proposal where you pay $10,000 and then, I don't know, $200 a month? Or would you be doing it at $400? What would you be doing?
Typically, we have to disclose that you've got the $10,000, but typically I would say set up a payment plan for the 5 years. And then if you want to, you can prepay it to reduce it, get out of it more quickly. That way you've still got that nest egg there in case something does go wrong. Now,
I'm pretty naive, as you know. So I would think if you went to big bank and said, here's the proposal, he's got $10,000 plus he's going to pay $400 a month. The big bank would say, we would rather have the $10,000 up front because of the time value of money.
And they might.
But not usually.
Right. Usually, I mean, what the bank is really looking at is the quantum. How much are you offering to repay them? They might come back and say, well, okay, we know you got 10,000. You've offered us 24. So that we don't go after that $10,000, maybe you'll pay a little bit extra. Instead of paying 24, maybe they're going to make you pay 25 or 26.
But you're right. The big banks are more interested in the total amount, the cents on the dollar.
That's right. What's the number that you're offering to repay them? And then they look at how are we going to get that money?
Yeah. And so you and I would use the concept of the time value of money. I would rather get $10,000 today than $10,000 2 years from now.
Right.
Because I could, pay off my own debts. I could put in a savings account, whatever. But for the bank, if they are offered 30 cents on the dollar, for example, it doesn't seem to matter to them whether they get the 30 cents today or the 30 cents over 5 years.
So, certainly not as much as it would matter to you or I.
And do you have any theories as to why they are like that?
Because banks are stupid.
There you go. His name is Ted Michaelis. I have no I guess our firm name is Hoyes Michaelis, so we are associated in some way. I think it's either there is no time value of money to them. Money is kind of free. Well,
think of a bank as a flow-through enterprise, right? Money comes in, money comes out, and they're used to things taking a long period of time, and that's why they get paid over a period of time. I mean, so for them, it's cash flow.
And it may just be we do the math based on the cents of the dollar, and we don't want to complicate it by whether the proposal is over 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. We're all getting the same amount at the end. And that's what our loan loss provisions all feed through and everything else.
Sure.
So I guess the point here is if you have a lump sum of money, but it's not enough to fully repay your debts,
then talk to somebody.
So what if I got another idea here. What if I take the $10,000, put it in my RRSP, and now I don't have the money?
Yep.
Would that work?
Well, so there's some concerns with that. So the first is you're giving the impression of people that you're being a little bit clever. If you put the money in an RRSP, it's just, at a bank, just a regular RRSP, and bankruptcy law has the right to go after that money if it's been sitting there for less than a year. So maybe if you're going to do this, you've got to wait another full year before you actually deal with the debts. There are ways around that as well, but depends on how locked in you want that RRSP to be. So
yeah,
it gets complicated.
And if I'm the bank, I'm going, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, that leaves a bad taste in the mouth.
So you had $10,000 and you deliberately tucked it away in some vehicle that we couldn't get it. And now you're asking for a deal. You don't really strike me as the honest but unfortunate debtor.
Well, but if the deal was still that same $24,000, then they wouldn't be as concerned.
They probably wouldn't.
Because they're getting the same rate of return they would have had regardless.
Yeah, and I think my advice would be very similar to yours. I'd say, okay, we have to disclose because there's paperwork that goes with this.
You can't just make $10,000 disappear.
Right.
Unless you're my wife.
Boom. We should have her on the podcast sometime. Now, I mean, I guess if you got the $10,000 when you were unemployed and over the next 3 or 4 months, you used it to pay your rent and your groceries and everything. And as a result, it wasn't there.
People would understand.
Okay. Then but the bankruptcy and the proposal documents, which are sworn documents, good old Form 79, you have to actually swear, here's what money I got in the last year.
And here's what I did with it.
And here's what I did. These are outside of your normal employment income.
Right.
And if you did get a $10,000 inheritance, it probably got deposited into your bank.
So they know about it anyway.
Right. There's a record. So being too cute just gets you into trouble. Yep. So I think my advice would be the same as yours. I'd say, okay, we're going to disclose everything because they're going to find out anyways. And we're going to do the math and we're going to figure out that, yes, the proposal has to be $400, $24,000. Right. Which can be over up to 5 years, $400 a month. Yep. So we'll offer them that. And the bank might say we'd like that cash up front, but most of the time they won't. Right. And then my very strong advice would be dump the $10,000 into the proposal right off the bat. And now you've only got $14,000 more to pay. Yeah. And I'd probably tell you to wait for 6 months before you start dumping extra money in the proposal because you don't know if something's going to go wrong. What kind of luck you've been having lately? You lost your job. You got all this debt. Give yourself a little safety net. So, and this is why, dear listener, if you've got financial troubles, you got to sit down with someone and kind of think it through. Right. Because off the top of my head, I'm saying dump the money into the proposal, but you're saying, okay, but am I back to work now? Is my health situation improved, or where am I at?
Is the car going to break? Is there, do I know that I've got expenses coming up? Have I been self-employed, so I got to owe taxes? There's lots of things. There are lots of variables here.
Yeah, and maybe the answer is, well, why don't you put $2,000 or $3,000 into the proposal?
Maybe
put the rest of it into a TFSA, so it's tucked away. You can't get at it. It's out of there. And then over time, if you don't need the money, then you put it in. There's many different nuances to it. I guess the other point we're making here, though, is don't try to be cute.
Right.
Because they're going to find out.
Yeah.
It's just
remember, I said banks are stupid, but they're not.
Yeah. Well,
anything you've done, they've seen before.
Yeah, and they've been around for 150 years.
Right. And they have more money than all of us. Yes. So they must be doing something right.
And again, you've been banking with a bank.
Right.
So there is a record. You do have a credit report that also has a bunch of information on it. There are tax records. Right. So if maybe it's not the bank who's going to catch on to this, maybe it's CRA. Because if you've got money in a TFSA, an RRSP, a new home buyer's thinger, that's all in CRA's records.
Right.
So I think your best option, and this is my closing comment, is if you are in a situation where you have a lump sum of money, sit down with a licensed with a licensed insolvency trustee and walk through what the different options are.
Right.
Now, I guess one option we didn't consider was, well, you got $10,000, you owe 20. You could call up the creditors and say, hey guys, are you willing to take 50 cents on the dollar?
Yep.
If it's a credit card that you're up to date on, they're going to say no.
Right.
If it's a debt from a year and a half ago and they've already written it off, maybe they'll say yes. But doing it through a consumer proposal guarantees you that it's all done and the paperwork's good.
And you're going to deal with everybody as opposed to one-offing. So it's just simpler.
Yeah, but, it's easier.
At the end of the day, you got to make this decision. What we're trying to basically tell you is look at your options. And a lot of these options you're not going to know unless you're a financial professional. So come see somebody that does.
Right. And we'll walk you through it so that you're getting a deal that works for you, but that is also accepted by the creditors and not getting yourself into any trouble. Don't go talk to your buddy who says, oh, here's what you got to do. Put it in crypto and it'll all be fine. It probably won't work out. The good news is you have a lump sum of money.
Right.
And so that does give you some flexibility to, as you say, get caught up on some of your other things, your rent, whatever, but also makes it easier to come up with a deal that will be acceptable to the creditor. So that's our advice. So there you go. So the summary is, in the vast majority of cases, the correct answer is pay down debt.
Right.
You save on interest and you have no further risk. End of story. 30 seconds. That's all we needed for the show. But
and how long have we been talking?
We've been going
27 minutes.
27 minutes. So, but there are other nuances to it, and that's why you need to get professional advice.
Yep.
There you go. That's how it works, people. So that is our show for today. This is our last show for the month of July. I did say it was the summer. So for the month of August, we'll be going to the vault and rebroadcasting our most helpful shows.
Our most helpful or our most popular?
Yeah, it won't necessarily be the most popular, right? We're going to try to, look for shows that perhaps they were from a year or two ago. People haven't heard them again. There's a lot of stuff that we talk about that, wait a minute, that's even more current today than before. So I'll probably record a quick new introduction for each of them, and then they'll be on YouTube and all our audio podcasting platforms. Labor Day weekend, I'll be back with a short season premiere show. You get that weekend off. You don't have to come here. I'll just tell people what we're going to be talking about for season number 11 of the Debt Free in 30 podcast. And of course, if you're sitting there watching this and you have not yet seen our documentary Debt-Sized, then it's right on the Debt Free in 30 channel on YouTube. I suggest you go and watch it. I haven't looked recently, but we're well over 60,000 views on it. So we've got a lot of positive comments on that.
It's not a commercial, folks. It's a documentary. It's a history lesson.
Yeah, and it's kind of makes you go, I didn't know that. That kind of puts it all into it's very well done. So I definitely recommend you check that out. And of course, make sure you've liked and subscribed and notified and hit the bars and smash the. You can say smash the like, Ted.
Is that what it is? Yeah, smash the like.
Smash the like, and that way you will not miss any new episodes. So next week we'll be in the vault. September we'll be back with season number 11 of Debt Free in 30. Until then, for Ted Michaelis, I'm Doug Hoyes. Thanks for listening. That was Debt Free in 30.